Hey everybody, this is Jim McBride, Charleston City Councilman for District 3, which is Johns Island and part of James Island. I want to talk to you a little bit about hurricane preparation and recovery. Today's date is October 15th, 2024. And last night I just got back from Black Mountain, North Carolina, where I spent about 4 days doing disaster relief and recovery operations with an organization called Red Truck Men. You can check them out at redtruckmen.org. They're a North Carolina, South Carolina based faith-based organization. Started out with men meeting once a month to have breakfast together, read a little bit of the Bible, pray together, support each other. And it branched into supporting orphanages and blood drives and things like that. And it's their first disaster response they've ever done was after Hurricane Helen impacted Florida, Georgia, western South Carolina, western North Carolina, eastern Tennessee a couple weeks ago. And the reason I'm talking about this is because having been there on the ground and being very aware of the potential danger that Johns Island and James Island has when it comes to being impacted by a hurricane. My concern is for the citizens of District 3, the quality of life and the ability to survive a hurricane, to evacuate from a hurricane, and to recover from hurricane if people are not evacuated or just to recover in general. If something terrible like Hurricane Helene happens here in District 3 or in Charleston as a whole. And I've had this desire to be able to bring together private organizations on Johns Island. In particular, Johns Island has two ways and two ways only on and off the island. And only one way is the official evacuation route, which is down Main Road. And if something happens on one of our main arteries on Johns Island, whether it be Maybank, Main, River, Brownswood, Murraywood Road, which all those roads are vulnerable to trees or to major accidents that can block the path and block the road. And just knowing we're in a hurricane zone. A high probability of hurricane. I've really been focusing on how we can be as prepared as possible. And I've volunteered with disaster relief organizations for a few years now. My wife for many more years than me. I've done disaster recovery with Team Rubicon, with Samaritans Purse, and now with Red Truck Men. And there's a lot of talk about the government response to Hurricane Helene, FEMA, compared to the private response. And again, my wife was up in Boone, North Carolina for a week, about a week ago or 10 days ago. She just got back about 5 days ago. And I can talk a little bit about what she saw and experienced and what Samaritans Purse does for disaster recovery. And I want to say that Samaritans Purse, in my opinion, Samaritans Purse is the best NGO, non-government organization in the world when it comes to disaster response and around the world. They don't just respond here domestically to hurricanes and earthquakes. They respond all over the world. War zones, Battle of Mosul in Iraq a few years ago, respond to Ebola outbreaks in Africa, respond to earthquakes anywhere they happen that cuts off people from getting medical help. They have mobile medical clinics that usually respond overseas, but even responded in Central Park in New York during the COVID. It's an incredibly well experienced, trained, resourced organization. They went to Ukraine 1 month after Russia invaded Ukraine in February of 2022. They were the first major NGO in Ukraine. They beat the United Nations into Ukraine to help the people. They had a network of churches all around Ukraine that they used as contacts to set up distribution warehouses for food, for water, for blankets, etc. And I was out there with Samaritans Purse in June, July of 2022 and saw it for myself. And Samaritans Purse was distributing food for the World Food Program, which is part of the United Nations, because the United Nations did not have its own network in Ukraine to distribute food. Samaritans Purse did, the first ones in there to have something like that set up. So, I just have a lot of belief in what private organizations can do, and not even just the organizations, but even just private individuals in North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Texas for other hurricanes in the past. Local people help local people, and local people can help local people better if they already have somewhat of a plan in place, or at least communication in place. Now, when I was there in North Carolina, it's been about 2 weeks since the hurricane impacted that area, and I was on Black Mountain, and FEMA had a presence there, and they were doing some work, but the way the government responds to things, especially the federal government, is typically very slow and bureaucratic. Now let me back up really quick. Local government, our firefighters, our police, our first responders, EMS, they are incredible, and they're incredible every single day of the year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They respond, they're trained to respond, they're equipped to respond, and they save lives all the time, every day, mostly without any fanfare, any media coverage. They are and will be a huge resource if a major hurricane hits Charleston, Johns Island, James Island. They will absolutely be phenomenal resources. But sometimes that's not going to be enough. They're trained and equipped for basic day-to-day operations, for what they do, for putting out fires, for responding to heart attacks, things like that. They don't have the staffing to all of a sudden staff up to respond to a huge major disaster. That's where private citizens come in, because federal government by nature is slow and bureaucratic, and that gap has to be filled by us, by individuals. Now, the point I want to make is that and one more thing too. So in North Carolina, when I was out there, we would have a lot of people coming up to us asking for help for trees that were blocking their driveway, blocking their sidewalk, tree in their house, on their garage, whatever it was. And they heard about red truck men being out there, and they'd come and ask for help, and then they would ask in kind of a timid voice, how much is this going to cost me? And I was so happy to say every single time, it's not going to cost you a dime. And they would just start crying. They couldn't believe it. They didn't have to file any insurance through us or anything. It was 100% free, 100% volunteer work, funded by a private funding, not by taxpayers, and they were just tears of joy I saw many, many times. The way FEMA operates is FEMA has some built-in capability, but in this where we were, they were having to contract out help. People would stand in line for 2 hours, finally get to the front of the line, fill out the paperwork with FEMA about their address, what the damage was at their property or wherever, and then they would wait for days and not hear anything from FEMA. In the meantime, FEMA's contracting out to private contractors, private arborists, private home reconstruction companies, private roofers, whatever, and of course paying them the market rate for their services. And that's expensive. And who pays for that? The taxpayers. And it's fair for those private companies and contractors to charge what's the fair rate, but that's a lot of money. Samaritans Purse, Team Rubicon, Red Truck Men, other organizations like that do it for free, and they ask for donations, and people donate privately, and encourage you to do that. Go to SamaritansPurse.org, RedTruckmen.org, Team Rubicon. There's other religious organizations out there. The Baptists have a really good disaster response organization. Please, I encourage you to give money to them, because the money goes to practically helping people on the ground who are suffering. I've seen it with my own eyes many times. And it really has made me think, not just this recently, but I've been thinking the whole time since I've been elected to this position, is that there are 30 churches on Johns Island, more than 30, I believe. And in Black Mountain, North Carolina, in Boone, North Carolina, where my wife was for a week, where do people end up going for help? But the local churches. The local churches are the first to get people there to kind of get things cleaned up and operated, so that people can come to those churches to get supplies, food, water, blankets, whatever. That's where Red Truck Men set up shop at first, was a church for about 10 days until we moved to a new location. And that is a great network that I want to try to encourage the churches on Johns Island, especially, who I think is especially vulnerable to potential hurricane, getting off the island and recovering from after a hurricane, is through the churches. So I'm working with the churches, trying to work with the churches and other organizations like Our Lady of Mercy, Barrier Island Medical Clinic on Maybank, to get an established network of just communication, if nothing else, and also potentially resources to all these churches, so that if a major disaster happens, someone's trapped on the island or several people are trapped on the island, that they can go to their closest church to get help. So I'm putting this video out there to ask for people to help me set up that network. And I'm not talking about a formal city, church partnership. I'm talking about a Jim McBride with other people on Johns Island, James Island, that are willing to help get this network set up. I've talked to a couple churches that I'm already working with to help with this, and there's at least 2 churches that I know of on Johns Island that already do free repair work for homes, for people that need their homes to be rebuilt from, their home is old and dilapidated, they don't have insurance, their roof is leaking, whatever it is. That's what churches can do. There's a lot of people who are believers and who want to give back and for a higher purpose and help their fellow neighbor, and that's what churches are for. It's one of the reasons churches are around, is for that purpose. I want to be able to empower that desire and empower churches to be even more capable in that sense. So I don't care the denomination. I just think that with churches scattered around the island, and people being able to know they can go to a church when a disaster happens to get help, to get resources, to get information, that's what I want to help set up. So if you're willing to help, I would really appreciate your help. You can just come to me. You can go to votejimmcbride.com. That's votejimmcbride.com. Find out how to get a hold of me. Follow me on social media. And I'd be very grateful. And I just really hope that if something like Hurricane Hugo from several years ago, or Hurricane Helene that just happened, Hurricane Milton that happened even more recently down in Florida, that we can be ready to support and respond and into action to help people faster, to save people's lives, to help people get back on their feet. So again, this is Jim McBride, Charleston City Councilman. Thanks for your help and thanks for listening. God bless.